Welcome back. Let's talk about lying, the kind that starts small, then suddenly blows up into something much bigger. One excuse turns into another, one hidden detail leads to more, and before long, someone is trying to keep the whole story together. So why do people lie in the first place, even when they know it can backfire?
I think people usually lie because the truth feels costly. A lie can help someone get out of trouble, cover up a mistake, or save face when honesty feels too exposing. In the moment, it seems like the fastest way to smooth things over. The problem is that the relief doesn't last. Once the lie is out there, the person has to stick to the story, watch their words, and hope nothing comes out later. So what looked like an easy escape can quickly turn into pressure.
Exactly. That's what makes lying so messy. It rarely stays in one place. A person tells one lie to get through the moment, and then suddenly they have to cover their tracks, remember what they said, and make sure the story still holds up the next time it comes up. And the weird part is, the original problem is often smaller than the mess the lie creates.
Yes, because a lie usually solves the emotional problem, not the real one. It gives quick relief. It helps someone avoid shame, conflict, or consequences for a moment. But the real issue is still there, just now hidden under something false. That's why lies often build up pressure instead of removing it. The person may look calm on the outside, but mentally, they're still managing the situation. They have to keep up appearances, stay alert, and hope nobody notices the weak parts of the story.
And sometimes, the lie isn't even big. That's what's so frustrating. It can be one small detail, one thing someone chose not to say, one convenient version of events. But once the truth comes out, the size of the lie isn't the only issue anymore.
Exactly, because people react not only to the lie itself, but to what it does to trust. Even a small lie can shake trust if it makes the other person feel that reality was edited. That's the deeper problem. The listener starts thinking less about the detail and more about the fact that something real was hidden. And once that happens, the conversation changes. The relationship changes. The lie may be small on paper, but emotionally, it can still leave a mark.
I think that's why people often say it wasn't only about what happened. It was about the fact that the truth was hidden. Because dishonesty changes the whole atmosphere.
Yes, and that reaction makes sense. Truth gives people something solid to stand on, even when it's unpleasant. A lie removes that stability. It makes people question what else has been adjusted, softened, or left out. That uncertainty is exhausting. Once trust cracks, people often look back at old conversations differently. Things that once felt normal suddenly feel suspicious. So the damage is not always loud, but it spreads.
And lying is exhausting for the person telling the lie, too. People talk about lies like they're shortcuts, but they're actually a lot of work.
They are. Telling the truth is usually simpler because you're just saying what happened. But a lie has to be constructed. You have to make something up, keep it believable, and sometimes repeat it later without changing the details too much. That takes mental effort. And if the lie lasts, the person has to stay on top of what they said before. They may become extra careful, defensive, or vague because they're trying not to slip up. So even when the lie looks smooth from the outside, it often creates tension underneath.
That's probably why some people start over-explaining. They give too much detail because they're trying to make everything sound convincing.
Exactly. Sometimes people think more detail makes a lie stronger, but too much detail can actually make it look strange. When someone is telling the truth, they often speak more naturally. When they're lying, they may try too hard to make the story sound right. Of course, that doesn't mean every nervous person is lying. Some people are just anxious. But inconsistency matters. If the explanation keeps changing or the details don't line up, that usually says more than body language cliches.
I'm glad you said that, because people love fake lie detection rules. They think if someone looks away, pauses too long, or touches their face, that must mean they're lying.
Yes, and real life is much more complicated than that. Someone can avoid eye contact because they're stressed, shy, embarrassed, or simply uncomfortable with confrontation. Meanwhile, a confident liar might look perfectly relaxed. There is no magic signal that always gives a liar away. It's more useful to notice patterns. Does the person dodge direct questions? Do important facts keep shifting? Does the explanation fall apart when you look into it more closely? Those things matter more than one nervous gesture.
Let's talk about why people lie, because not every lie comes from the same place. Some lies are selfish. Some come from fear. Some seem to come from shame.
That's true. Fear is a huge reason. People lie because they're afraid of consequences, rejection, punishment, or conflict. Shame is another big one. If the truth makes someone feel exposed, they may hide it just to protect themselves emotionally. Then there's image. A lot of lies are really about identity. The person wants to look more responsible, more successful, more loyal, more in control than they actually feel. So the lie becomes a way to protect their image. It helps them save face in the moment, even if it creates trouble later.
Yes, and that's why lying is not always dramatic. Sometimes it's just someone trying not to look bad. They make a mistake, panic a little, and instead of owning it, they try to cover it up. And then there's the white lie, which people often treat like it doesn't really count. Someone says something just to keep the peace, avoid an awkward moment, or stop the conversation from getting uncomfortable. It may sound harmless, but even a white lie can become tricky if it turns into a habit. Then honesty starts to slip away, and people stop saying what they really mean.
Exactly. A white lie usually sounds softer because the intention seems kinder. A person may say something nice they don't fully mean, or hide a truth because they don't want to hurt someone's feelings. In that sense, the lie is meant to smooth things over, not to cause harm. But intention isn't the whole story. Sometimes a white lie protects the other person, and sometimes it mainly protects the speaker from discomfort. That's the important difference. Is the lie really about kindness, or is it just a way to get around an uncomfortable truth?
Right. And I think people feel that difference. A gentle lie may sound polite in the moment, but if it keeps happening, it can make the relationship feel less real. At some point, people want honesty, even if it's a little uncomfortable. Otherwise, everything starts to feel too edited, too careful, too managed.
Exactly. That's why lying becomes dangerous when it turns into a pattern. Once someone gets used to editing the truth, even small lies start to shape the relationship. And then honesty is no longer the default. The person begins to choose what sounds easier, safer, or more flattering instead of what's true. That's when trust starts to weaken, even before anyone openly realizes it.
And once that happens, the relationship starts to lose something important. It may still look fine on the surface, but it doesn't feel as solid anymore. When people get too used to editing the truth, They stop speaking freely. They begin to calculate. They think about how the truth will sound, how it will land, how to leave certain parts out without technically lying too much. And that carefulness changes the whole tone. The conversation may stay polite, but it stops feeling open.
Yes, because honesty creates a kind of ease between people. You don't have to keep checking yourself. You don't have to remember which version you told last time. But once lying becomes normal, even in small ways, that ease disappears. A person starts managing the impression instead of simply being real. And the more they do that, the harder it becomes to come clean later. Because now they're not only admitting the truth, they're also admitting that they hid it.
That's probably why people delay honesty for so long. At first, it's one small lie, and they think they'll fix it later. But later becomes harder, not easier. Now they have timing, trust, and embarrassment on top of the original issue.
Exactly. Delay adds weight. The truth may have been uncomfortable at the start, but after a lie has been sitting there for a while, it becomes heavier. The other person is no longer reacting only to the truth itself. They're also reacting to the fact that they were left in the dark. That's why the sentence, "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" carries so much emotion. It's not just about information. It's about trust, closeness, and whether the relationship felt honest in the first place.
And I think that's where people get confused. They focus so much on the content of the lie that they miss the emotional effect. They say, "But it was such a small thing," without realizing the hurt comes from being shut out of reality.
Exactly. The size of the fact and the size of the impact are not always the same. A small lie can still leave a mark if it makes someone feel excluded, manipulated, or unimportant. That's why trust is such a central part of this. Once people feel that the truth is being filtered, they stop relaxing into the relationship. They become more alert. They start noticing gaps. Even normal conversations can begin to feel uncertain.
And then people start acting like detectives, which is never a good sign. They listen more carefully, check details, compare stories, look for inconsistency. The whole connection becomes tense.
Yes, because uncertainty changes behavior. When trust is strong, people usually give each other the benefit of the doubt. But when lying has happened, they may stop doing that. They begin to look into things more closely. They start asking follow-up questions. They may even read into small details because they're no longer sure what to rely on. That doesn't always mean the relationship is broken, but it does mean something important has shifted.
Let's talk about the person who lies, though, because people focus on the damage to others, which makes sense. But lying also affects the liar in a strange way. It can make a person feel split, almost like they're managing two realities.
That's true. Lying often creates an internal divide. On one side, there's what actually happened. On the other, there's the version being presented. Keeping those two things separate takes energy. A person may start feeling tense, watchful, or even irritated because they're always trying to protect the false version. That's one reason lies can be so draining. The person is not just dealing with other people. They're also carrying the strain of keeping the story intact.
And sometimes they get so used to that strain that they don't even notice it anymore. It becomes normal to speak in half-truths, to dodge, to soften, to redirect.
Yes, and that's where lying can turn into a habit rather than a single bad decision. Once someone sees dishonesty as a convenient tool, they may start using it automatically. Not always for huge things. Sometimes just to avoid discomfort, criticism, or responsibility. But over time, that pattern shapes the person. They become someone who reaches for a false version first. And that affects character, not just communication.
That's what makes self-deception so relevant here too. Because if someone lies often enough, they may start believing their own edited version.
Exactly. Self-deception can grow out of repeated dishonesty. A person tells the same softened version so many times that it begins to feel real. They stop seeing their behavior clearly. Instead of saying, "I lied because I was afraid," they say, "I had no choice." Instead of saying, "I avoided responsibility," they say, "I was protecting the situation." Those stories make the lie easier to live with, but they also make growth harder. If someone can't see what they're doing honestly, they can't really change it.
So honesty is painful, but it's also clarifying. Without it, people stay trapped in these protective stories.
Exactly. Honesty can sting, but it clears the fog. It lets people deal with what is actually there instead of constantly managing appearances. That's why truth, even when uncomfortable, is so useful. It gives people something real to work through. A lie may protect someone's pride in the short term, but it often blocks real repair, real intimacy, and real growth.
And maybe that's why some people feel relief when they finally tell the truth. Even if the consequences are bad, there's a kind of release in not having to perform anymore.
Absolutely. A person who has been lying often carries tension they don't fully admit. They're monitoring, adjusting, staying careful. When they finally come clean, the consequences may still be difficult, but at least the performance ends. They no longer have to protect the false version. That can feel painful and relieving at the same time.
So, if someone really wants to stop lying so much, where do they even begin? Because telling the truth sounds simple, but for some people, it clearly isn't.
I think it begins with noticing the moment before the lie. That split second matters. What are they trying to avoid? Embarrassment, blame, conflict, disappointment? If they can identify that fear, they can start understanding why lying feels tempting. After that, it helps to practice honesty in smaller moments first. Not dramatic confessions all at once, but small acts of directness. Saying, "I forgot." Saying, "I messed up." Saying, "I didn't want to admit that." Those moments build a different habit. Over time, the person becomes more able to own up to reality without immediately trying to escape it.
That makes sense. Honesty is probably a skill too, especially when someone has spent years using lies as protection.
Exactly. For some people, honesty feels risky because they've learned to associate truth with punishment, rejection, or humiliation. So change doesn't happen only by saying, "Stop lying." It happens when they learn that truth can be survived, that it doesn't always destroy everything, that sometimes it actually clears the air and makes relationships stronger. But to learn that, they usually have to tolerate some discomfort first.
So, in the end, lying is not only about saying something false. It's about what kind of reality people build between each other. Something stable or something constantly managed.
Exactly. And that's why honesty matters so much. It doesn't guarantee comfort, but it gives relationships a real foundation. A lie may seem small, useful, even harmless at first. But if it keeps people away from reality, it eventually costs more than it saves.